Hello everyone and welcome. Chillo, let's get ready for a super fast revision of breathing and exchange of gases, targeted especially for your NEET exam. हम सारे important concepts को एकदम crystal clear कर देंगे. Let's dive right in.
So you all know कि इस chapter से 2 to 3 questions NEET में आना पक्का है. But the biggest question is, ये questions आते कहाँ से हैं? Well, in this explainer, we're going to target those exact high-yield topics ताकि आपके marks guaranteed हो जाएं. So, let's begin.
Alright, let's kick things off with our first section, the pathway of breathing. The first and most basic question is, what is the exact path air takes to reach our lungs? देखो, gas exchange समझने से पहले उसका रास्ता आना बहुत ज़रूरी है. चलो, let's trace it together.
Okay, so the journey starts with our external nostrils, and from there, the air enters the pharynx. Now remember, pharynx is a common passage for both food and air. फिर आती है larynx, our sound box, followed by the trachea, which then divides into bronchi and even finer bronchioles. And the final destination, the alveoli. बच्चों, इस पूरे path का सबसे important point ये है कि alveoli is the only main site for gas exchange. Got it? Good.
Now, a typical NEET question could be, what's the difference between the conducting and the exchange parts? It's simple, really. The conducting part, right from the nostrils to the terminal bronchioles, is just the highway. It transports the air, cleans it, humidifies it, and brings it to body temperature. But the exchange part, which is basically the alveola, that's where all the magic happens. यहाँ होता है actual oxygen or carbon dioxide का diffusion. ये point note कर लो.
Alright, moving on to section 2, the mechanism of breathing. The next big question is, सांस अंदर और बाहर जाती कैसे है? What's the secret? The entire game, बच्चों, is about creating pressure differences. Let's see how that works.
Inspiration मतलब सांस अंदर लेना is an active process. क्यों? Because your diaphragm and external intercostal muscles have to contract. This increases the thoracic volume, which causes the pressure inside to drop. And since air moves from higher to low pressure, it just rushes in. Now, normal expiration is a passive process. The muscles just relax, volume decreases, pressure increases, and air flows out. Simple, right?
Now let's quickly fire through the key respiratory volumes. First up is tidal volume, or TV. This is the air you breathe in a normal, relaxed breath, like you're doing right now, and it's about 500 milliliters.
Next, what if you take a deep, forceful breath in, like really deep? That extra bit of air you just pulled in, that's the inspiratory reserve volume, or IRV, and it's a massive 2,500 to 3,000 milliliters.
And just like that, the extra air you can forcefully breathe out after a normal breath, that's the expiratory reserve volume, or ERV, which is around 1,000 to 1,100 ml. बच्चों, ये तीनों values, TV, IRV, and ERV are super important for NEET. Make sure you memorize them.
So, these volumes combine to form capacities. And the most important one you need to know is vital capacity, or VC. What is it? It's the maximum amount of air you can breathe out after you've taken the deepest possible breath in. The formula is super simple. Just add ERV, TV, and IRV. This is a favorite question in exams, so please remember it.
Okay, let's move to what I think is the most important section of this chapter, gas exchange and transport. यहाँ से rote learning काम नहीं आएगी. यहाँ से conceptual questions आते हैं. तो बिल्कुल focus करके समझिएगा. Ready?
The rule for gas diffusion is simple. It always moves from high partial pressure to low. That's it. For example, look at the partial pressure of oxygen, PO2, in the alveoli. It's 104. But in deoxygenated blood, it's only 40. So naturally, oxygen jumps from the alveoli into the blood. Now look at CO2. In your tissues, PCO2 is 45, but in the alveoli it's 40. So CO2 moves out of the tissues into the blood and is then released into the alveoli. See? ये values का खेल ही सब कुछ है. Here's another very important question. How is CO2 transported in our blood? Well, the vast majority, a whopping 70%, is transported as bicarbonate ions. And the enzyme carbonic anhydrase plays a huge role here. The rest, about 20 to 25%, hitches a ride with hemoglobin, and a tiny 7% just dissolves in the plasma. But that 70% figure, don't you forget it.
सोच के बताओ, when it comes to oxygen transport, what is the single most important graph? The one that shows up in NEET as a direct question. Come on, you know this. You got it? It's the oxygen dissociation curve. Yes, the answer is the oxygen dissociation curve, which has a very specific, very famous shape. It's a sigmoid or S-shaped curve. And to remember this, I have a simple mnemonic for you. S for sigmoid, S for snake. Believe me, during exam pressure, these simple little tricks are lifesavers.
Now, this right here is an absolute hotspot for NEET. The curve shifts to the right. But when? A right shift simply means that the bond between oxygen and hemoglobin is breaking, which is called dissociation. This happens when there's high PCO2, high H+ concentration, meaning low pH, and a higher temperature. Now think, where do all these conditions exist in our body? In our hardworking, metabolically active tissues. It's the body's perfect way to make sure tissues get the oxygen they desperately need.
And now we've reached our final section. We've understood the how of breathing, but now we need to know the who, as in who controls this entire process. Let's quickly look at the control centers and a few common disorders.
Okay, so our breathing rate is primarily controlled by the respiratory rhythm center, which is located in the medulla. Think of it as the main boss. Then in the pons, we have the pneumotaxic center, which can moderate its function. But the most important trigger for breathing are CO2 and H+ ions. When their concentration rises, a chemosensitive area gets activated and signals you to breathe faster to get rid of that excess CO2. Fun fact, oxygen's role in regulation is actually pretty insignificant.
Finally, let's touch upon two common disorders. In asthma, the bronchi and bronchioles get inflamed, which causes wheezing and difficulty in breathing. Emphysema, on the other hand, is a chronic disorder where the alveolar walls get damaged. This reduces the surface area for respiration. And, as you know, a major cause for this is cigarette smoking.
And with that, I'm leaving you with one final question to think about. Cigarette smoking causes emphysema. We know that. But why? What's the reason behind it? I want you to think about this and then go check for the answer in your NCERT textbook. Keep learning, keep revising, and all the very best.